Good afternoon. Welcome to Paraspar Talk, organized by the Office of Communication, Indian Institute of Science. Today we have Professor Monto Mani of the Institute, who will be speaking on can development and sustainability dwell on the same page. So before we begin, I would like to give a brief introduction of the speaker. Professor Monto Mani is an author and professor at the Center for Sustainable Technologies, formerly called the ASTRA, and Center for Product Design and Manufacturing, Indian Institute of Science. Professor Mani is an architect with a master's degree in civil engineering and doctoral specialization in sustainability, wherein he developed a systems framework identifying societal attitude as a critical determinant of sustainability. Professor Mani's research interests include sustainable architecture and human settlements, especially design, building techniques, and practices that could revitalize symbiotic human-nature relationships. He is also involved with the development of integrated sustainability evaluation and forecasting models and decision support systems, including participatory community planning. Professor Mani's research deals with sustainability science as an interdisciplinary domain, focusing both on its theoretical basis and application in architecture and design. The Sustainability and Design Lab, in short form it's called OoC-IISc, comprises multidisciplinary researchers working on diverse areas of sustainability dealing with buildings, renewables, product design and manufacturing. Professor Mani has co-authored a book titled Sustainability and Human Settlement, published by Sage Publication in 2005. He has co-edited three books, Urban Dwellings and Structures, Current Status in Their Adoption, published by Springer, being the most recent one. Professor Mani holds many patents, a low embodied energy building integrated photovoltaic roof mounting mechanism and an integrated sanitation system and a process for effective treatment of wastewater are among them. Among the many awards conferred upon him, Professor Montemani's team was awarded the Lexus Design Award India 2019 for Clean Rat, a smart and portable sewer maintenance and declogging robot. He was awarded Best Faculty in the year 2018 Innovations and Tech Next 2018 and Industry Academia event organized by Computer Society of India and IIT Bombay. We welcome you, Professor Mani, and request you to visit.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a off course that I normally talk, and primarily recent developments on campus. There's been a question on what is development, what is sustainability. So I'm just trying to put forth these arguments, and if there are any questions, any opinions that you have which are different, I would definitely like to hear. So this is our lab. I think Bitasta, thanks for the introduction. So this is a picture that I use in the course very often in terms of what is development, right? So you see the two kids in the background and the two kids in the front. So you would see one set is fun, free, the other is sophisticated, restrained. There's an informalism in one, there's a formalism in the other. There's an opulence in one and frugality, simplicity in the other, right? And very often we toggle between the two. Here again, when we say development, the keywords that have been surfacing in the courses that I have been offering is, okay, improvement. Then we always question, okay, what are we improving? When are we, wanting to improve? Where are we improving and why? Right? Same thing goes with progress, right? There are, even in literature, there are debates on what is progress. Then we talk of advancement, right? Science and technology, all of that. The other aspect is, okay, sustainability, we talk of health, right to life. And here again, there are debates in terms of constitutional bindings, right? In the US, it's not constitutionally binding that the state looks at the health of the individual, right? In the Indian constitution, it is the individuals looking at the environment, protecting the environment, but it's not enforceable. Right? Nordic countries, yes, it is a right of the state to ensure the health of the citizen. Then we look at peace, happiness, contentment. We look at social harmony here. And then we look at planetary systems or biodiversity. Sustainability essentially looks at this. Then we come down to, okay, is development actually leading to these or amenable to these or concurrent with these? Whether it is equal to, leads to that, or it doesn't lead to that. Again, these are two images from the studies that we've been doing. The one on the left is a house that we had studied way back in 2004. It's in a place called Nayagram in West Bengal. And one on the right is the lab that we have, building integrated photovoltaics. We are generating as much energy or rather a lot more than what we actually consume. So one side is, say we say that, okay, these are regions that require development. And the right hand side we say are examples of sustainability. These are some articles that I have been pulling up in the recent past few days in terms of amount of microplastics we breathe every day. And today, the built environment also happens to be a large source of microplastics. One of the largest sources of microplastics coming into water comes from your wear and tear of car tires. And these are all being documented now. They are being quantified. Right? Also issues with how air pollution affects bleeding, you know, in the brain. And these have already been, people are quantifying these to various pollutants, right? And some of these pollutants can be generated indoors. We also have increasing incidences of cancer. India apparently is going to be number 3 in terms of cancer instances, right? And there's a small section of the National Building Code we are modifying almost after 10 years, where we are trying to say that how can the built environment ensure occupant health? Then there are also these microplastics and PFAS found in water, and one of them is this trichloroacetic acid, right? And these have been found in almost every living tissue, including plants and even in groundwater. And how are these being impacting our health, right? A lot of research is going into, okay, how can we have treatment systems that can eliminate microplastics from water? We also had the recent ruling from the courts, which telling Himachal that you guys have to regulate your development if you have to retain the environment and the stability of the region there. These are all the news in the past few days. Again, issues connected with planetary health, right? And typically whales are social animals, and they've been found to sing or communicate with each other, and increasingly that has actually receded, right? And people are actually saying, okay, is this an indication of something larger that is likely to happen? So my question to you is development and sustainability on the same page, right? What happens or what is happening and what we idealize as development, are they the same? So coming to sustainability, we have these few words. We say, okay, lasts long, right? Is everything that lasts long sustainable? Okay. I'll come to each of these. Then we say environment friendly. We look at biodegradable stuff. We are looking at biodegradable straws. We are looking at paper that is biodegradable and things like that. We also look at affordability. But if we increase affordability, is that contributing to sustainability? We also look at most of the initial development projects looked at a cost benefit analysis, looking at dams, looking at other roads going through, cutting across forests. They all looked at cost benefit analysis. We also look at convenience, right? Particularly with AI ML coming in, your quick deliveries for Swiggy and Blinkit and all of these, right? They all make it convenient. We also look at convenience in terms of how we operate things, like the way we were just using buttons to lower and raise the screen, to how we control the lights, the intensity of lights, right? And we look at choice versus adaptation. And the reason why brought in the word choice is that if you look at development literature, the development definition that is agreed upon is access to choice, right? But does increased levels of choice or choices actually contribute to sustainability? Okay, and this is something that I want to ask you as to, if you look at adaptation versus choice, what is the connection? Are they on the same page again? Any thoughts on that? Say, I'll give you an example that now I can control the temperature of the room. to suit me. I like the light levels to suit me. So I'm adapting, I'm changing the environment to suit me. That's a matter of choice, right? Now, how is that connected with sustainability? See, what happens is that when you increase choices, you lose the ability to adapt. And in that sense, if you're looking at Darwinism, your ability to adapt actually starts to go down with increasing choices. And then safety. This is something that I brought in last. I was called in by the National Safety Council, the US wing, and they asked me to come and talk on safety. You can take pictures, no problem. So they and I was wondering, what is sustainability and safety? Right? And then I realized that actually safety is fundamental to sustainability. Yes. So I'll come to this lasting long. You have plastics, you have forever chemicals that last too long, right? And then we find that they're not sustainable, right? You have research going into anti-aging, you have people looking at genetic research trying to switch off the gene that controls aging. And in mythology, that is the only boon that is not achievable, right? You ask for anything else, they'll give you, excepting the boon to live forever, right? Then we look at environment friendly. We look at paper straws. Now, paper straws also have glues which have forever chemicals. They have bleaching agents which are not healthy. And these are all coming from literature, okay, scientific published literature. Then you have renewables, which we call environment friendly, but hydropower has its problems. Photovoltaics has its problem. End of life photovoltaics is a serious threat today to groundwater, to looking at climate change. Then there is issue of greenery, right? And today, even in the government reports, there's a difference between green cover and forest cover. Both are not the same. Your lawns are green cover, right? They are not necessarily translating to forest. So people across the world, there is now, particularly in Europe, a move to dismantle dams. Even in the US, it is there to restore the salmon run, which go back to spawn. And when you're looking at cost effectiveness, there's something called the rebound effect, right? Rebound effect essentially means that when you make things cheaper or when you make things appliances very efficient, your net consumption actually goes up. It doesn't go down. And this again in literature has been documented that countries have rebound effects of 400%, 500% when they are targeting reduction in energy consumption. Then you make plastic toys, all of these cheap, affordable, but many of these plastic toys are lead laced, they are toxic. Then where do we go here? Your mobile phones and navigation, I'll talk about that. Benefits to society, again, we've talked of biodiversity loss, we've talked of the internet, right? Now internet is all pervasive. Today, if you're looking at almost a child, at birth probably will have a SIM card to go with, because everything else is connected with that, right? And convenience and quick, right? So today there is a big debate on AI ML, and there's a small news clip I also have. There's a difference between access to information and experience, right? And this typically we are facing with students where because of access to the internet, they have access to information. Right? And I remember there was a design student who wanted to come and use an angle grinder from my workshop. And you know what's an angle grinder? It's a cutting machine running at 14,000 RPM. And I asked him, do you know how to use it? He says, yes. And then I asked him, okay, let's go. And when he started using it, I realized that he hadn't actually touched it before. Then I asked him, how do you know it? He said, no, I've seen it on YouTube. Now, how do you get experience of something versus information? So the information is right. Then we also have these food and cooking. Everything is transformed today. We don't cook and take, I know Dr. Sampath takes a lot of time in a lot of the delicacies that he makes. But today that's changing because even in traditional, cuisine, a lot of these are available on delivery today. IoT lights, this was again a small study that we done in the lab, where if the incentive to get up and even switch off the light is taken off, then it obviously leads to a lot of sedentary life or excessive sedentary life. Right? And then again in product value, plastic bottles and medicines, this is again a big thing in terms of plastics leaching into the medicine. And again, there is a convenience there because they say that if you use glass bottles, then there are breakages, it's heavy, your transport cost increases. So how do you have a trade-off there? So coming to safety, then I realized that your fight and flight response actually comes from your sense of safety, right? To protect yourself. It's also to do with ensuring your health and productivity. And that's where we're trying to look at buildings and safety norms and things like that. And wellness of the planet. Now, the reason why I'm bringing in wellness is because we brought into the National Building Code that sustainable design actually should ensure societal and planetary wellness. So we are going into defining what wellness is, but today's talk is not to deal with that. So there are some clips again here, like the thermal paper that you use, printouts, and the hand sanitizers that you use to sanitize your hands, both don't actually go along because the skin absorbs the chemicals, right? How many of us look into these aspects when we're looking into our own immunity and safety? This is again from last year, where the fire extinguishers that I used, a lot of the firefighting gear are also contributing to microplastics and exposure to forever chemicals. Right, so much so that Massachusetts has already taken a legislation that they will eradicate it. Right, so equipments in the dwelling which are meant to ensure safety are actually toxic, including your fire retardants. Right. Then disposal of your face masks and stuff like that. Right. So this is some part of the course that I'm covering, that you have different dimensions of sustainability. You have generational sustenance, locational sustenance, and technology or design. So I'll be talking about the last more. Generation sustenance actually looks at intergenerational sustainability in terms of, okay, is the current generation healthy? Is it giving rise to the next generation that is healthy? Locational sustenance is, are you able to sustain at a particular location, right? Whether it's because of toxicity, whether it's because of income, whether it's because of too congested, too much traffic, whatever it is. So you actually shift to another location. Technology and design is the ability for you to sort of be sustainable, and that obviously the precursor is development. Again, there was an interesting thing that if you look at the definition of nature in the dictionary, it actually doesn't account for humans. It is everything around the humans that is considered nature. So there is actually a move now to include humans as part of nature. And then there's a usage of the term environment has actually increased over time. So this is what I was saying, that you have, this is intergenerational sustainability. You have the current generation to remain sustainable, to give rise to a second generation, right? And today with the toxicity and the soil, the food and water that we have, globally your fertility rates have dropped. So this clearly shows that sustainability at one point of view is actually being threatened. Right? And people having or all these IVF clinics and hospitals and cancer hospitals increasingly visible wherever you travel is an indication of a society that is not healthy. It's not an indication of sustainable development at all. Again, this was a nice article that I came across, 1933, about Einstein writing about the pace of science. Right? And he writes there saying that science is just moving too fast and it's not possible that common man can catch up with it, and science should actually slow down. Right? And this he wrote way back in 1933. Right? But what did he say now? Right? He's saying that people don't stop to think about science, and today one needn't even think about science. Right? And this is what I was saying, that this is again a news clip from yesterday, day before, where this is a Nobel laureate, Professor Hinton, who actually says that we got something wrong here as far as AI/ML is concerned, because now they can communicate within themselves in languages that are not comprehensible by humans. This is another thing that I was expecting is we more or less disconnecting one or multiple sensory connections with the environment, either a hearing or vision. And very often when we travel or drive on the road, we cannot look at the other person because that other person is either talking on the phone or looking at his screen, right? So that connectivity is there, lost. And particularly as animals or as primal beings, it is very important that our sensory organs are actually connected with the respective environment. Right? And when these are disconnected, then we end up with problems, right? So if your sense of connecting with the geography you are in is lost and you rely more on technology, then it ends up with old age problems. Again, this I don't have to emphasize with is the social media or the internet actually causing or increasing improved social interactions, right? There's a very interesting paper on does money buy happiness, right? And with increasing income, the level of contentment and happiness has actually steadily been going down. And the recent the update paper on that actually said that while incomes have been rising, the sense of people leading meaningful lives is actually going down. And this is particularly visible with Generation Z, right? Where they get disillusioned very easily, they're difficult to convince. And this was also one of the largest study that was done in terms of the single most factor that influences human health, right? And that is social interaction. Right? Nothing else. And then I'm just telling you, giving you examples of how industry has responded to emerging threats of sustainability, where Patagonia has actually said that nature will be our only stakeholder and all the investment and profits that we make will be pulled into. But are all companies doing the same? I'm not wanting to present a negative picture all along. There's a lot of work that we are taking up involving AI, ML, and looking at resilience in buildings and trying to understand how buildings adapt. So coming to sustainable development, it's always a debate between prosperity versus consumerism, right? And both are not the same, right? We have had cultures that have been prosperous. Whenever we travel, we look at heritage, we witness the cuisines, the architecture, the arts that have been from a culture that has been prosperous, right? Consumerism is not equal to prosperity. And there's Dr. J.C. Kumarappa, who was called the Gandhian economist. He actually, way back in the 1930s, actually said that development should ensure that it does not cause any irreparable damage to the environment. Right? And he looked at decentralized distributed economies way back then. But somehow the Nehruvian model didn't take up from there. Right? Then we had Silent Spring, 1960s. Then we had the World Commission on Environment and Development, which we call the Brundtland Report. But these are old, right? You had also had limits to growth, which looked at problems of today, increasing consumption, increasing fuel consumption. But there was one interesting report. This is from the report to the president, started by Jimmy Carter. It was called the Global 2000 Report. It was a study done in 1980 to actually predict or foresee what is likely to happen in the year 2000. And that report actually said that if present trends continue, the world in 2000 will be more crowded, more vulnerable to disruptions than the world we live in now. Serious stresses involving population, resources, and environment are clearly visible ahead. Despite greater material output, the world's people will be poorer in many ways than they are today. This is a compilation that I've been making. Is the various threats and scales of sustainability that you have. You have the planetary scale, you have natural processes, you have human activities, and here you have the scale connected with human society. So you have gravitational influences that can influence everything down here. Right? Natural processes, you have tectonic movements, climate change, global warming. All of these can affect, volcanoes. Right? Human activities that can affect at the planetary scale. You have biological, nuclear weapons. Right? So earlier, most of these influences were top down. That is, anything happens here influences everything here. But today, what is happening is that everything happening at the product level actually is influencing everything at the top. Right? Today, ISRO is looking at, okay, how do I get back all the space junk, all the satellites that are launched? And we already know that products are contaminating microplastics and all of these chemicals at the planetary scale. So this was a figure that I actually looked up this morning. I wanted to find if there was a sketch available for what goes around comes around. And trying to again draw a parallel or whether development and sustainability are on the same page. So if you look at things here, development is in this direction and sustainability is something like this. right? So probably not looking at the same direction. Then what is sustainability science? People have been asking that. It is studying interconnectedness within and between systems, looking at dependencies and vulnerabilities, impacts, identifying and defining indicators. This is very important. Right? When you look at indicators of progress or indicators of health, it is very crucial. And defining indicators actually requires you to study interconnectedness and dependencies between systems. Then you are looking at a dynamic balance. And the fact that human health is intimately linked to that of the planet. So if you do anything that is harming the planet, obviously it comes roundabout. And that is the earlier figure that I had shown. So if there are any questions I can take, or we could, I have some examples of case studies that we've done. Hmm? Yeah. 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 So this was 2005 when I joined the institute. We were called in to provide sanitation to a tsunami affected community. This was the island village. This is how the landscape was way back 2005, 2006. And the challenges we faced was a high water table, risk of flooding, heavy rainfall. They were generating some fire, ash because of the firewood that we were using. They were having some agriculture on the island. If you look at this mix, eco-sand turns out to be a very viable alternative because it doesn't pollute the groundwater. But then the community didn't want it. So we came up with this model called the modified compact septic tank, and which actually has this two chambers at the back. This chamber actually regulates the level of water in the septic tank, and this was completely raised. And this is probably the only sanitation design which can resume functioning even if it gets flooded completely. So we built about 140, 160 of these, and even when we visited, this was 2006, 2007, and when we even visited them in 2017, 18, nearly 60, 70% of them are still functional. Right? So this is one intervention that we had made. We also, as part of our research, looked at sustainability in manufacturing. When we look at our products, all of them involve multiple geographies. Your critical minerals come from somewhere, your manufacturing is happening somewhere, processing is happening somewhere, its usage is happening somewhere else. So we tried to see if at various geographies involved can we examine sustainability. And we also defined two types of impacts, embodied impacts and active impacts. Embodied impacts is easy to control. It's mostly by industry, right? The process energy going in, process water going in, the emissions coming out of manufacturing. And anything that you can do with embodied impacts actually translates to profit or reduced production cost for the industry. The active impacts are difficult to trace. This is where it goes into the user's hands. How they use it, how they dispose it, the radiation coming from your mobile phones and how long you continue using them, the plastics that you're exposed to. All of these are active impacts. Right? So we try to actually structure both. And what we try to do is that typically in your life cycle assessment, you have various phases of the life cycle, and you try to come up with one number at the end, which is the sum impact of your product. But you typically don't know what is it in the various geographies that are involved and what each of the phases has. So this is where we actually define sustainability in terms of sustainable manufacturing processes. And then this work of ours was cited by the European Environment Agency's technical report on circularity and biodiversity. Coming to buildings, we have to distinguish between zero energy and energy zero. The building on the left actually doesn't require electricity. These are buildings that are receding, probably about 40 to 50% of India's building stock. And the right hand side, okay, we are saying, okay, we're going to generate as much as we consume, and these are renewables and clean and all of that. When we were studying those dwellings, we found that despite external temperatures hovering from say 30 degrees to about 40, 41, indoor temperatures still are within 2 degrees, and these are very much within comfortable range. This was just the temperature, right? Then what we did is that we further examined how would they respond to climate change. And we looked at traditional dwellings, which are vernacular, and we looked at modern dwellings. We looked at 3 locations. And just for simplicity, if you're within this gray band, you're comfortable. in terms of indoor temperatures. What we found is that if your climate change is going to go from warm humid to hot dry or warm humid to temperate, your traditional dwellings show a far greater resilience as they are responding to climate change. Right? So this was published in scientific reports that comes from Nature. And what we've realized is that this increasing thermal discomfort will cause us to have more air conditioning, more energy consumption. That again will cyclically contribute to more climate change. We also looked at another aspect of what is called moisture buffering, and this was Suchi's work, who just graduated. Is in addition to temperature, do buildings regulate indoor moisture content in the air? Right, and we actually even modeled the alveoli and the trachea to look at the moisture and heat exchange in the air that we inhale. And typically, the air that enters the lungs should be saturated. So if you're breathing in air which is dry, your airways actually compensate for the moisture. That's why it starts to get dry. And what we found is that from a respiratory comfort point of view, the deficit in moisture in the air is much lower in vernacular dwellings than in conventional dwellings. Right? And this we even examined. We had a project, a collaborative project with the University of Bath, where we are trying to see whether plasters can be developed which are hygroscopic and can be applied on indoor surfaces of modern building materials as well. Then at end of life, traditional dwellings don't have an issue of toxicity or disposal. They just go with the environment. This is something that is coming into the National Building Code as well now, is the energy footprints and ecological footprints associated with traditional dwellings that are here. So you will see operational energy is less than 6 kilowatt hour per meter square, 6 units per meter square. And your embodied energy is 500, this is per year. And your modern dwellings, actually this goes from 8 to 250, 40 times. And embodied energy is almost 8 times. Right? And this is where we are setting off right now. Your ecological footprint is from 0.5 to 6. Right? And if you imagine that 60% of India's building stock is here, moving here, where do we have the resources or the energy to support this? So these are some of the closing sites. One is sustainability is about continuity. It's not about permanence. Prosperity versus consumerism, livelihood versus lifestyle, health versus treatment. Right? And this is important because very often we say living next to a hospital is going to sort of save my life. But the issue is you are living in an environment which is very toxic. Right? And there's a very good book called Environmental Medicine by Dr. Joseph Kropp. He actually says if a patient comes sick, let me examine the environment that has caused the sickness and not necessarily treat the symptom of that contamination. Information versus experience, I already shared this with you. And people are now talking about net zero, but net and zero cannot be the same. Right? When we are saying, okay, we are net zero in terms of carbon emissions, what about the land area? Right? Are we generating energy within our own footprint? It's not the case. Right? We have huge lakes which are being covered with photovoltaics. We have desert areas being converted to photovoltaics. Yeah, so this is a quick question to you. That is, if you, these are called green measures when you have plastic bottles converted to clothing. Is that sort of, from a sustainability point of view, a good approach? Yeah?
Pardon me if I say this, but please, I don't think the way 8+ million of us are, there's anything called sustainable.
Right.
Anybody who disagrees with me should wake up and smell it. However, the point is, that if I don't use plastic bottles, haven't used one for years, for a decade. I don't even use tissue paper. I try to, but then I'm not trying to say that I'm someone from 10,000 years back where there's none of this. There's no option to pollute or use that. If somebody sells me a polyester T-shirt, something like this, it says 8 plastic bottles that somebody else used, recycled into it. I'll prefer this this over a virgin polyester, even if I have to pay like 20% extra, simply because my mindset is we should do as little harm as possible. I use public transport. It's not net zero. So yeah, so that's if you want consumer's point of view.
Yeah, I get that. The reason why I'm putting that up is that the original sources of microfibers, plastics, found in aquatic life was coming from washing machines. And it was from synthetic clothing tumbling in washing machines, going down the pipe, and ending up as microfibers.
Yes, exactly. So 8 bottles in a t-shirt. That t-shirt will also release microfiber.
Exactly.
Later.
Later.
Do less harm. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. ठीक है. Then the other part is about plastic packaging for building blocks, right? And this was a small consultancy project that we got, where there's a colleague of mine, Sauradeep, he calls it trashcrete, where any trash is converted to concrete. What was that we had to do was test these blocks, right, for the compressive strength and water absorption and things like that. And what we found is that each block was different. Some had springs in them, nibs in them. Some had styrofoam in them. So one block to the other, there were variations. And then to typically understand water absorption, you put these blocks in the oven to stabilize their weight. And then we had some fantastic aroma coming out of it, right? And then I told Sauradeep, how are we going to certify this product? We can only tell them that these are the values, because they wanted the IISc tag saying, okay, IISc certified. And to think of it, we're already having microplastics, we're already having VOCs, and we are going to build blocks and live in them, right? So it doesn't, as to what are these approaches and how do we really deal with them. So I'll stop with this. Thank you.
So, thank you for this talk. It was very, I think, perspective changing in a way. But I have few questions. First thing is, one major problem that I see with this growing scientific temper in nations is that you reduce problems into a quest for finding solutions. So, like you mentioned, more research is going into say fertility medicine or something like that, but they're only in some sense corollary to the actual problems that are causing them, right? But then still science is going on and on, trying to figure out ways to solve these problems, but I still feel like we must make some sort of regulatory goals to prevent these problems from arising in the first place. But then the problem with regulation is that there is this notion of development that everybody has with high-rise buildings and with convenience as its main priority. So, for example, how would you convince someone to give up all the current things that they have to probably leave their urban housing and convince them to maybe try out this vernacular type of housing, for example, or anything in some sense, like how would scientists and government agents convince the public that maybe it is time to get rid of some conveniences and look back, because this is at the rate we are going, it's basically leading us nowhere.
Yeah, the answer is yeah, you're right. You're right. I think bang on. I wouldn't contradict anything that you've said. The issue is on the perspective of development that we're carrying. Right? Even the economic theories that we rely on, even the context or definition of development is something that we've been tutored into. Right? We don't see any other way. Right? Unless and otherwise, even if you look at vernacular dwellings, people are, when you can monetize that as homestays or something like that, then it sustains, right? But for people who are having a subsistence living, for them, they just sell up the land and then buy a taxi here, commute between the airport and the city, thinking that the children will have better education. But if you look at it, you're providing the same type of education, same syllabus to the whole lot of people. There's no diversity there, and everyone is going to compete for the same kind of jobs. But if you look at the diversity that India had, and in fact, when nature got back to us on saying that don't you have one building typology for your region, and we said no, we don't. Can we leverage that diversity, right? Because once you stereotype education, then the vocational skills and all that start to vanish. And these have been, I think, these I think to an extent we still have the diversity to leverage. Give them education, but let them retain their vocational skills, right? So, other than that, I think it is difficult because the problem is both ways. One is I keep saying this, that go after your desires, satisfy your desires is the mantra that the consumerist sort of ideology gives you. The theological ideology is have no desires and you're happy, right? So usually till retirement we follow the first part. And then post-retirement, we say, I'm going to lead a meaningful life. I'll be very calm. I'll be peaceful. I'll now contribute to society. That has to reverse. That is the reason why you find that people finding themselves leading, and now if you go to a lot of these homestays or, organic farms and stuff like that, you will find a lot of the youth hanging around there where they simply don't know what to do with life. They have traveled around the world. They've seen money. Their parents don't force them to earn money. They're lost. That is a problem. So, yeah, you should see Economics of Permanence. There's a small documentary by an economist. It's good.
Okay, and one more. So, one more follow-up, not follow-up, but one thing I noticed was in the life cycle of a product, from extraction to disposal, there is one thing that is, I think, maybe it's not missing, but the fact is that even after disposing the product, the elements in them are not like it's very improbable that you will be able to use them and recycle them to the exact amount again. And the concern I have is that elements means like because everything in this world is cycling. A major part of these cycles will get disrupted because they are making some product.
Yeah.
From that product, it's very hard to again decompose it back to the original mineral form.
Yes, you're right.
So, and then again, we're throwing up junk to the space and all. So, how would so after some point there will be a place where we just cannot extract anymore, right?
I think that is where industrial ecology comes in. It is sort of in place to an extent, where companies like Apple is trying to do something. It says that the newer models have a lot of recycled. They have mechanisms where they have designed the phone for disassembly. In the design stage itself, they know how to recover these. So it is happening, but not widespread. It's not widespread. And the problem with consumerism is particularly when people could predict failure, right? That is, they could clearly design a product for a certain life, service life, right? And that is which kept consumerism growing, right? So you buy a car, 3 years warranty, one day after the third day, you have your wiper stop working, your door, power window stop working. And then, because they could predict that, and they want money in service, right? Earlier, even for example, your BMWs and Volkswagens have taken up that route. They were not designed to fail. But now failure is a model for consumerism. So they are all intentionally brought in. They are designed to operate that way.
I just wanted to ask if it can we consider a reduced carbon footprint as an all-inclusive indicator of that we are heading on to sustainability.
Difficult. Carbon is just one element. You have toxicity there, and it's very. It's not so straightforward. That's why this whole zero and shunya are not the same. Shunyas have no impact at all. Right? Take Bangalore for example. You replace all the vehicles with EVs. You think the traffic is going to move? I mean, what sense it makes? What vehicle you drive in Bangalore city? Right. So the product level and system level you need to examine them separately. the system level, this is a problem. At the product level, you say, yeah, low carbon, this much value, it makes sense. But when you put it into the system, you will see that probably the footprint is much higher.
It is expected that the urban population will increase more than 70% by 2050. So the existing building stock, approximately 70% is yet to be constructed. So there is a huge challenge that, of course, development will happen. But how will you mainstream sustainability, circularity, in a vast country like this, and different building topologies, and also that majority of the households are informal settlements, slums, where mainstreaming these kind of concepts are quite challenging.
It is. See, China, India, I think there is a difference. Both are huge populations, both have equal amount of rural building stock. Like you said, various building typologies, diversity, if we can leverage that. And that is also what we brought into the National Building Code. That if you start to retain and revive the skills associated with diverse building materials, you can create smaller economies, right? And that is what happened during the COVID. When people went back to rural areas, they were able to figure out ways to actually connect and make money from the city, but remain where they are, right? It doesn't mean that everyone has to urbanize or to migrate to urban areas. That has to happen at a policy level, right? So this is a much larger policy level thinking that has to happen.
Yes, because of this as a cascading impact of increasing energy demand, increasing waste management.
I will give you this data point also. We had a workshop that we had done with some German students, and they came and said that, see, for us, village is just a definition. The lifestyle in the village and in the city, access to amenities, conveniences are the same, right? It isn't the same in India, right? So, what I was coming to, I missed the thread of thought. Anyway, sorry.
I heard Carl Sagan say this a lot of times that even in pale blue rotary says in all this darkness, all our obscurity, there's no hint that help is going to come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. He saw it then, and he testified in the US Congress for Climate Change long back when the term wasn't there. There's no Al Gore and all that. And now, I'll do this as a rapid fire. You can do a yes or no. Are we doomed on this planet? Yes or no? What do you think?
In the long term, maybe not. In the short term, yes, there are issues.
Well, will we finish ourselves?
Humans, I don't think so.
You mean to say we'll survive?
Some way or the other.
Somewhere or the other. And is planet hopping, like some Elon Musk and stuff, what they're proposing, is that the solution? And do you think it's possible?
I mean, if you're looking at my lifespan, no.
Beyond, it's possible.
It is, yeah. I mean,
imagine going to anybody, any creature, any life on Earth. And life on Earth is the only form of life we know. We don't know anything. Although the universe is vast and perhaps infinite. So, do you think it's impossible to go to Mars and live? And is that, first is it possible, and second is that?
See, most of the technological advancements that people make with robotics and prosthetics and assisted living and stuff like that, it is, they say, okay, it is, somebody will benefit from it, people need it, but it's mostly for the elite, right? So most of these will be within the realm of people who can afford it at one point of time. Large scale mainstream, it may not happen.
I mean, I have two sets of questions. First set of question is, why are plastics made at all?
Right.
Second, what are the areas where we cannot survive without plastics? What are the areas by policy we have to completely eliminate plastics? This is first set of question. Then I'll ask the second.
Yeah, so see, I think plastics is finally a petrochemical, right? So when people went down the oil economy, they found it as a beneficial product, right? If you look at immediate where we cannot do without plastics, I would feel in the healthcare sector initially. Right? The rest of the places there have always been alternatives for plastics. Right? Even in the healthcare, I'm presuming in the near future, blood stored in plastic sachets, they will go back to glass. Right? But in this blood transfusion and quick, for need for things being non-contaminated, as of now, immediately you can't replace it there. But
Second thing is, I faced this situation in my village. My father wanted to have a house in the village. He said, fine. Generally our dream from the city would be, a tiled house, veranda, and other things in the village, what we thought about it. But my father at that point of time felt that society in the village looked at as a retrograde step, and he wanted a slabbed concrete thing to show that we flourished in the city. Right. I could not say no to him because the society, I went to a village and saw that when I proposed the tiled house, but actually that was costing more because there were no skilled
masons,
labor,
yeah.
and the part material, the specific mud has to be brought from somewhere and other things. So I tell him, but how do we change this? Is there a way that half this way, half that way, that internal walls can be still traditional and external walls?
Yeah, that can be worked with. See, we're not going back to see when I talk about how traditional dwellings perform. The immediate question they ask me is, okay, do you want us to build 2 feet thick walls? That is not the idea. The idea is, can we have modern buildings also perform likewise and be less toxic? That is where I think we are at. The other issue is, going back. There's a case of identity. See, everybody wants identity, right? So dwelling becomes a reflection of an identity, including the cars that we buy and stuff like that. So everyone wants to be different, and like I was saying, we are tutored into a particular perspective, right? I remember when this mineral water had just started. That time, even in movies, there used to be a joke about people in the house filling their mineral water with regular tap water and giving it to their child, saying, "Ye leke jao karke." So that perspective is there. But I think overall things are changing. There is a sensitivity coming both among the people who have land in rural areas, who own land, and among the so-called affluent who can go in for so-called organic and this and that. But there is change coming. So people who build with earth today in India would be super rich or they are the super poor. The mid segment is still stuck with.
We have seen your designs in Challakere campus, right?
Professor Reddy.
Huh?
Professor Reddy
Yes,
mainly
yes,
was the person who did that.
yes, yes. We heard your name along with
Yeah, I did some analysis on the design and
analysis.
the thermal
Yes,
performance.
Why is it that it was possible in Challakere campus and not in Bangalore campus?
I'm the wrong person to answer that. I don't find answers to that myself, I think. Yeah, the point that I wanted to, I got the thread, is that we again had some students, foreign students taking our course. And what I told them is, can you document how your forefathers lived? If you have a grandparent who's alive, can you ask them about diet, how they lived, how they spent their time, right? And what we found was across the world, when people consumed locally, the diversity of food that they had was much more than what we have today. Right? And when you were saying about Carl Sagan, right? Uh, this problem with the humans is that they can't deal with themselves. You're right, and that was evident even in COVID. Right, when people were locked up, unable to deal with themselves, they ended up with suicides and depressions and stuff like that.
And making a lot of money on this topic.
Whatever. Right. Right.
I'm putting a general question. I'm not a scientist. Here, no, all the scientific research is benefit of the humanity. That is the basic thing. There is no moral, no authority group no to decide about it. Policy also, a common man has no option to choose the policy which is harmful to the way of life and the environment. And as human beings, part of the planet, they don't have any voice. This is the reality, where people have no option, no choice to raise their voice or legally to live. You say that law says, you have a healthy living. 21 article they say no, fundamental right. But where is the person who can go and demand this one, asking the capitalist or the scientist or the research intelligence area officials, question them, you are doing a research everything at the cost of making my life miserable. There's nobody. So law is also one, the article is there, fundamental right is there, you got a living and a society. But progress doesn't give an option to the poor man. Poor man means common man. Majority of them, 80, 60, 70% are rural area. The few elected people also come from the rural area only. Now they are elected because of their intelligence and opportunities and access to the information knowledge. In this place, how a scientist can play a role, or the common man, what way you are helping with your research and the scientific things, no?
Yeah, it's a valid question, I think. See, one way is, even accepting the talk request which Vitasta had made, that we present this to people, we publish it, it's publicly accessible. Then we are part of committees, we are trying to revise things, right? The National Building Code last revision was 2016. We've significantly altered it with great resistance, which will come out in October, November. And there isn't any code across the world which has looked at the role of the building in restoring planetary wellness. Right? So if these are at least there, and most of the architecture and the design community says that, see, we don't have an official document to refer to when we try to convince our client. Now there will be a document, right? That is where we can start. And the next level, in your individual capacity, whatever you can do within your sphere of influence is all that you can do. Right? That's all I can tell you.
Hello, sir. My question is that if we are developing a new technology or a new type of product, so suppose we are not a big corporation, we don't know where our product is going to be made, how it's going to be assembled, but we are in the process of development of it. What steps can we do to ensure or understand whether our product is going to be sustainable or not? Like, is there any proper way to do that? And once we reach to a certain stage, what can be, like in building materials, for example, what can be some certifications we can aim for to understand whether we are going in the correct direction?
Okay. Can you tell me what, in your reference, is a product that is sustainable?
So, we are seeing, as you told, some paver blocks people are making out of recycled material for the laying of pavement. So that they are seeing it as green material. There are some of these green rated materials which are available. So this green rating also comes from some rating. So there also I have the question: how to rate something as green, and is it just a gimmick, or does it actually
Mostly a gimmick, honestly. Even people who are involved in it will tell you that it's more a checklist. You sweep your campus, you get a green rating. So yeah, see, there is data available, information available, right? So there are three threats if you look at the built environment today, right? One is toxicity. The second is inequitable access to conveniences or so-called benefits of development or healthcare or whatever. Third is disrupted planetary systems. So you can look at a product that addresses all of these, right? Can you talk of a product that is not toxic? Product not toxic and less toxic are two different things. Less toxic, you will get a green rating, right? Then you can look at, okay, what is the life of the product? Even if you look at tools, automobiles, anything, today they are not designed to be durable because people want change, people want new products, new varieties, right? And so if you specifically tell me building materials, I would say that. And the third part, when I say planetary systems, can you have building materials that absorb carbon, right? Rather than contribute to carbon, like what my colleague is doing. In the way it's a non-cementitious binder that they use. So it absorbs carbon and then it sets, but it absorbs at a very low rate. Can you think of such materials which can be locally procured and people can build by themselves? Yeah, construction cost goes down. So you can think in many ways like this. It is possible. But if you go down the green rating system thing, you will make a lot of money. There'll be, but it's not necessarily genuinely green. Thank you.
Close for the day. Thank you, Dr. Monto Mani, for this engaging lecture. And thank you to the audience for bringing in so many different questions and
Thanks to you, I think it was. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.